Balin Miller. October 1st, 2025. El Capitan, Yosemite National Park. A 23-year-old alpinist from Alaska has just done something extraordinary. He's completed a solo ascent of Sea of Dreams, one of the most serious aid routes on the entire face. The hard part is over. He's at the top. All he has to do now is rappel down. You can probably tell this isn't going to end well. Okay, so to give you an idea, Balin Miller was the kind of climber other climbers watched. He had built a following on TikTok and Instagram, camping below El Capitan in his signature orange tent, posting from routes most people wouldn't even attempt with a full team. Known online as the Orange Tent Guy, he was 23 years old and genuinely considered one of the most gifted young alpinists in the country. He was reportedly streaming parts of his descent, and then, at some point during the rappel, he went off the end of his rope. It's one of the oldest and most preventable mistakes in climbing. The rope ends aren't knotted, or aren't properly threaded, and the climber slides right off the bottom into open air. Witness accounts suggest his gear snagged during the descent, and in dealing with it, he ended up in a position where he was no longer safely attached. He fell approximately 730 meters, the full height of El Capitan's face, to the talus at the base. Rangers recovered his body from below the wall. His orange tent was still pitched at the base, exactly where he'd left it. The climbing community's reaction was a particular kind of grief, the kind reserved for when someone exceptionally skilled dies from something technically simple. Vishnu Viswanath and Meenakshi Moorthy. October 23rd, 2018. Taft Point, Yosemite. Sunset. One of the most photogenic overlooks in the park. A sheer, unrailed cliff edge dropping over 2,000 feet straight down into the valley. Vishnu Viswanath was 29, a tech worker in the Bay Area. His wife, Meenakshi Moorthy, was 30 and ran a travel and lifestyle blog with a significant Instagram following. They documented dramatic locations, cliff edges, rooftops, the kind of content that gets shares. Meenakshi had even written about the culture of daredevil selfies. She'd asked, in her own words, whether the risk was worth it for likes. No, of course not. The fuck? They set up a tripod near the edge of Taft Point at sunset and went to take a photo. At some point, they went over. Other hikers found the unattended camera equipment later, tripod still standing, no sign of the couple. Rangers were notified. They looked over the edge and found the bodies about 800 feet down on a rocky ledge below the cliff. Recovery required technical rope work just to reach them. The story went viral worldwide, and the detail that hit hardest was Meenakshi's own writing. Her blog posts questioning whether chasing dramatic images was worth dying for. She had identified the exact danger. She'd written about it publicly, and then she walked to the edge of Taft Point at golden hour with a tripod. There are no railings at Taft Point. There still aren't. Park officials responded with renewed safety messaging, which is the kind of thing that happens when the warnings don't come with barriers. The Vernal Fall Chain. July 19th, 2011. The Mist Trail, Yosemite. Above Vernal Fall, a 317-foot waterfall on the Merced River, running high and fast with summer snowmelt. There are warning signs. There is a metal guardrail. The signs say, "Do not cross." The river looks calm near the edge. It is not calm. Please, people, listen to the signs. A church group from California's Central Valley was hiking the trail that day. Young adults, a teenager or two, an afternoon outing. Several of them stepped over the barrier to wade in the shallows near the brink and take photos. The water was shin-deep and looked manageable. The current beneath the surface was moving at a speed that left no room for a second chance. One person slipped on the slick granite and was instantly grabbed by the river, swept toward the lip. Two others lunged to help, grabbed on, and for a moment there was a human chain above a 317-foot drop. 3 people holding on to each other in fast-moving water above a waterfall. The river took all 3 of them over the edge together. Dozens of hikers on the trail watched it happen. Witnesses later described screaming, people frantically waving, the terrible sight of 3 figures disappearing over the brink one after another, and then nothing but the sound of water. Search and rescue teams mounted an immediate response, but the waterfall's plunge pool and the turbulence below made recovery extraordinarily difficult. Not all of the remains were ever found. Dean Potter and Graham Hunt. May 16th, 2015. Taft Point, Yosemite. Evening. 2 men in wingsuits stand at the edge of a 7,500-foot promontory and jump. No permit, no authorization. Completely illegal. Exactly the kind of move one of them had been pulling in national parks for years. Dean Potter was 43 and one of the most famous extreme athletes alive. A climber, base jumper, and highliner who had spent decades doing things in the mountains that most people couldn't comprehend as physically possible. Graham Hunt was 29 and had often flown with him. Both were experienced. Both knew the risks. Both jumped anyway. The plan was to skim the terrain in wingsuits and deploy parachutes in the valley below. A friend waiting at the bottom lost visual contact. They never appeared. Rangers searched through the night by helicopter. They found the bodies the next morning below Taft Point. The wingsuits had not been enough. At the speeds involved in proximity flying, 160 to 200 kilometers an hour, skimming past rock faces, a misjudged line, a microgust, a fraction of a second's hesitation means the body hits granite at highway speed. Potter's death hit the outdoor community like a wall. Yeah, sorry for the pun. He had been considered almost mythologically capable. The idea that the mountain had finally taken him was genuinely hard to process. Park officials reiterated the ban on base jumping in Yosemite. The climbing world produced tributes calling him both visionary and cautionary. But if you ask me, it was basically asking for trouble, right? Brian Jordon, July 27th, 1985. The summit of Half Dome, Yosemite. Late afternoon. A group of 5 friends has made it to the top via the cable route, one of the most iconic hikes in America, nearly 5,000 feet of elevation gain, ending on a bare granite dome with a vertical drop of about 4,000 feet on one side. And then, the sky changes. Brian Jordon was 16, from Hayward, California, on an overnight trip with friends. When thunderstorms rolled in that evening, the group took shelter in a shallow depression near the summit rather than descending immediately. It seemed like the sensible option. Half Dome's summit is entirely exposed granite. The metal cables they'd climbed are excellent conductors. And at around 6:30 p.m., the lightning arrived. Multiple bolts struck the summit area in quick succession. One hit Brian directly, on or near the head, sending him into convulsions and physically launching him off the summit. Yes, you heard that right. This poor kid fell an estimated 4,000 feet down the sheer face of Half Dome. A second member of the group was also killed by lightning on top. 3 others were seriously injured. Other hikers coming down discovered the survivors around 9 p.m. and raised the alarm. A helicopter from Modesto flew to the summit around midnight to begin evacuating the injured. For your information, a direct lightning strike delivers somewhere in the range of 1 billion volts. It causes massive burns, cardiac arrest, and neurological destruction. Brian would not have been conscious for the fall. The 4,000-foot descent down Half Dome's vertical face ended the story well before impact. Rangers have warned about Half Dome's exposure in storms for decades. The cables, the bare granite, the altitude. It's essentially a lightning rod with a scenic view. Brian Jordon was 16 years old. He made it to the top, and the sky shot him off it. Andrew Foster, September 27th, 2017. The base of El Capitan, Yosemite. an area where climbers routinely stage gear, coil ropes, and rest between attempts. Not the wall itself, the ground, the safe part. Or what everyone reasonably assumed was the safe part. Andrew Foster was 32, British, from Wales, visiting Yosemite with his wife. Experienced enough to be in the El Capitan area, comfortable in the mountains, doing exactly what climbers do at the base of a big wall, preparing, resting, existing in the shadow of 3,000 feet of granite. And then, out of fucking nowhere, the cliff moved. More than 1,000 tons of granite peeled off the southeast face of El Capitan and came down. In climbing, rockfall is a constant background hazard. Loose stones, the occasional chunk. This was not that. This was apartment-sized blocks of rock accelerating down the face and exploding into the slope below, turning the staging area into a debris field in seconds. Witnesses described a deafening boom, a cloud of dust that blocked the view entirely, and cars crushed flat in the parking area as boulders the size of rooms hit the ground. Andrew was in the impact zone. His wife was also struck and critically injured. She survived after being airlifted out. He did not. The rockfall made international news, partly because of the scale. Geologists estimated it as one of the largest spontaneous falls in Yosemite's recent history. He wasn't on the wall. He wasn't taking a risk. He was standing at the bottom of a cliff, the way thousands of climbers do every year. Park management temporarily closed sections of the area and studied the face for further instability. The official position: large rockfalls are part of Yosemite's ongoing geological life and are inherently unpredictable. El Capitan has been shedding rock for millions of years, and it does not check who's standing below.